Welcome to the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones, and I'm so excited that you're here. The Plan B CRNA podcast is the only show made specifically for nurse anesthetists who are exploring options outside of their traditional career paths. This is the place to expand your mind and your goals as we uncover new ways to produce side income together. The mindset that we bring to any situation plays a key part in overcoming challenges and really enjoying our unique paths in life. On Thoughtful Thursdays, I like to explore emotional topics that are relevant to CRNAs and other providers. I think of this as my therapy, and I hope you learn some tips and tricks that you can use along your own journey. This episode is brought to you by On-Call Capital. On-Call Capital is dedicated to educating CRNAs and other healthcare providers about investing outside of the traditional stock market. On-Call Capital also provides opportunities for you, yes, you, to create passive income and generational wealth while also lowering your taxable income through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure you do that right now so that you don't miss an episode. Thanks so much for joining me today, and now on with the show. Welcome to Thoughtful Thursdays on the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones, and as always, I like to start these shows off with a quote that gets me thinking. Judith Viorst once said, "Strength is the capacity to break a chocolate bar into 4 pieces with your bare hands and then eat just one of the pieces." For those of you who don't know, today is National Chocolate Cake Day. Many of you listening may have New Year's diets that you're sticking to, and you should be commended for that. The average New Year's resolution lasts about 36 days, so you've almost made it farther than most. But for those of you who are like me, Chocolate Cake Day is an excuse to indulge. Now, it doesn't help that I've had desserts on the mind lately, too. With all the snow days last week, our family has been enjoying a lot of reality baking shows. On Zumbo's Just Desserts, talented bakers complete challenges and survive stress tests for a grand prize. On Baking Impossible, contestants compete in pairs in various challenges that combine baking and engineering to win a grand prize. With Nailed It, contestants are often not good at baking, but they're asked to complete various challenges for a prize and the coveted Nailed It trophy. Regardless of the show, all of the contestants hope to prove themselves worthy of the stages they're on. During these shows, you see how different people react to adversity. You see them pour their heart and soul into projects, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. Some will cry or get in their heads in the middle of a challenge as things hit a difficult point, but then dust themselves off and carry on. Some celebrate wildly when they win, and others cry tears of joy. These shows and many other reality shows out there tap into our fascination with testing our limits. We want to know how strong we are, what we'll do against all odds. But strength is measured in various ways against the tasks that are asked of us. I don't think anyone would question the strength of competitors on American Ninja Warrior, for instance. But the world's strongest man would probably perform very poorly on those same obstacles because they take a different type of physicality than just brute force. So what does it mean to be strong then? The sports definition is the ability to carry out work against resistance. Beyond physical strength, though, we know about strength of spirit, strength of character, and strong morale. These all have vague definitions of their own, but they're generally considered to be admirable traits to have. So to define strength, should we then separate out the different kinds of strength that we witness? Well, sports science has already done much of that from a physical standpoint. One person can have absolute strength, another person has power, and yet another has strength endurance, and so on and so forth. There are many different categories for distinguishing strength along these lines. We now separate maximal strength from strength speed, explosive strength from strength endurance, and reactive strength. We have eccentric, isometric, and concentric strength as well. But real-world application depends on a ton of variables: joint angles, accurate direction of resultant force, postural control and balance, mental focus, the absence of pain, etc. In order to respect the true specificity of strength, we could just say that marathoners have great long-distance running strength, weightlifters have great lifting strength, and Patrick Mahomes has great football throwing strength. But that's kind of circular, right? I mean, that just says that the strength is the ability to do stuff that takes a certain type of strength. One article I read came to this conclusion and then provided a simpler definition of strength. To be strong is to have ability, whether that's in life, in the gym, or in personal relationships. which makes sense as we generally list our strengths as tasks or actions that we can actually do well. Someone may be able to type 60 words per minute, so typing would be considered a strength. If you are trained to use WordPress or you can edit videos, for instance, those are both strengths as well. For my taste, though, the ability to do something well simply doesn't go far enough. I mean, I have the physical ability to pick up weights or perform crunches or train for a marathon. I also have the confidence to know that I can do them if I choose. So why don't I have some kind of a toned physique and rippling abs? Why is my farthest run a half marathon 10 years ago? Perhaps all this talk of strength is really just about having the fortitude to overcome the obstacle that's in front of us. It ties ability together with the willingness to carry on despite difficulties. Many of us have the ability to overcome the physical, emotional, or subjective obstacles that hinder our progress as human beings, but we're only truly strong if we have the courage to consistently use that ability. Which leads me back to our quote. Now I have had plenty of times in my life where I've been faced with a temptation and not succumbed to overindulgence. I've had flashes of courage and enjoyed plenty of small pieces of chocolate cake along the way. But I let my sweet tooth get the better of me more often than not, and I take a bigger slice than I need. Why is that? Well, because sometimes I'm willing to sacrifice some ethereal long-term benefit for a short-term dopamine rush. I mean, we've all been there, right? But part of becoming stronger-willed is recognizing these types of moments when they come along and developing habits to help you stay the course. I know that I enjoy sweets, so I just can't keep that many in the house. I won't eat Oreos if they're not in my pantry to begin with, which means I probably shouldn't walk by the candy and cookie aisles in the grocery store very often, or I should just let my wife do more of the grocery shopping. If my weakness is sweets, then at the very least, I should minimize that weakness, making me stronger by proxy, yes? Oh man, I sure hope that works that way. In positive psychology, for instance, the general premise is to bring our ideas of strengths and weaknesses into balance. They break human strengths down into 24 categories. Don't worry, I'm not going to go over all of those here. A weakness is simply a character area that you score lower in, rather than a full deficit of strength altogether. Weaknesses then aren't unfixable areas, but character traits that we can develop over time if we wish to do so through various techniques. So, how are you finding strength this year? What are you doing to change habits that need changing or to work on weaknesses that need shoring up? I'd love to hear back from some of you if you have something to add. You can leave comments on the YouTube page or in the rate and review function of your podcast player. And of course, I've put a couple of links in the show notes if you'd like to learn more about strength. I also threw in a chocolate cake recipe for those of you who, like me, you simply can't resist. That's going to do it for this episode, though. If you found value today, make sure you hit subscribe so that you don't miss a show. Be safe and take care of each other out there. And as they say on Zumbo's Just Desserts, may all of your sweet dreams come true. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. If you haven't already subscribed and reviewed the show, I'd be honored if you took the extra time. It really helps to expand our reach and get the word out about the show. If you're a CRNA who is interested in sharing your story on our podcast, I'd love to have you. Please email me at bobby@oncallinvestments.com for more information. This episode was brought to you by On-Call Capital. They are dedicated to helping providers like you develop passive income and generational wealth through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. Feel free to check out their website at www.oncallinvestments.com and subscribe to their free educational email series. You can find On-Call Capital on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also check out our YouTube page, where you'll find all of the show episodes along with other educational videos. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.